Bacasa. Today we have on the show Kip Vieth. Kip, you are owner-operator of Wildwood Float Trips out of Minnesota. Best place to fly into is probably Minneapolis, St. Paul area. A
Yep.
couple hours, I think, north of there. And you specialize in smallmouth, musky on the Mississippi River, but you guys do quite a bit. I mean, you got panfish fishing there, trout. I know in the off seasons that you run saltwater trips, etc. Why don't you give us a little bit of background on your location and lodge options, and then what we're going to do is dive into the smallmouth and musky fishing in some detail, really talk through that. And then in the latter half of the show, we're going to break down your setup on musky rods and how you like to get out there and go about that. But not only the breakdown of the rod, but then transition and talk a little bit about the mental aspect of musky fishing because it is a different game from a lot of other species.
Yes, very different, very different. So, yeah, I've been owned Wildwood Float Trips for 20 years now. We're located in Monticello, Minnesota right now. And it's about 45 minutes north of to an hour from the airport. And then the musky water that we fish is probably another hour from there on either side of the cities. So we're fishing the upper Mississippi and the St. Croix, and then some of the feeder streams that feed into the bigger water systems for the muskies. So, and our smallmouth fishery is the same thing. It's basically the same water that we're fishing muskies, but there's a few more options closer to the Twin Cities for the smallmouth. I actually used to run trips right through downtown Minneapolis before they closed the locks for the Asian carp. So, I mean, there's good fishing to be had right in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And so we're pretty blessed here in the Midwest to have such great water, especially in the Minnesota area. And like I always said, Minnesota is probably the most underrated fly fishing destination in the country because we can do everything pretty much except for saltwater stuff, of course. But
Yeah.
we've got Spring Creek trout fishing down in the Driftless area, panfish, and then smallmouth muskies. We do have some steelhead fisheries up in the North Shore. So there's a lot to fly fish for and to pursue here in Minnesota. It's just a great place to explore and to fly fish. I mean, it gets kind of a bad rap because of all the gear guys that fish here, but that's also a lot of them are my good friends, and they've made it a pretty popular destination for that. So it's
Yeah.
logical that fly fishing would be too.
Yeah, and the gear side, you learn a lot from that too. I mean, those guys they got some dialed in systems, et cetera, and learning to adapt to that and take little bits from here and there. I mean, I've always appreciated that from a learning perspective.
Oh, by all means. I mean, I started spin fishing for trout and everything else, and then kind of slowly just worked into the fly fishing aspect probably 40 years ago. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to learn from everybody, and I think a lot of the gear guys are taking stuff that we're doing with the fly rod, especially in the musky scene right now, and using those techniques into their gear. And we're doing the same thing with the gear guys stuff, taking that and incorporating that into our muskie fishing. So it's all good. We all learn from each other. We're all pretty respectful of each other. So it's a good symbiotic relationship, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's quite a bit of action going on there in your area and all facets, like you said. And we're going to dive in here into the musky and smallmouth stuff that I think has, in my opinion, grown quite a bit over the past couple of years. It's becoming more and more popular as people are recognizing, hey, there's other species to go after than trout, as a majority. So I'm excited to talk about that. Why don't you jump in first to the smallmouth side of things?
I'm a little biased, but I think the upper Mississippi is probably the greatest smallmouth river in the country. It's not the Mississippi that most people think of. It's low, it's clear. It looks a lot like a trout stream in July and August. There's a lot of weeds and Illinois pondweed. It's beautiful. And it's loaded with big smallmouth, and it's just a pleasure to get to fish it every day. The St. Croix is also wonderful. It's a national wild and scenic river. It's one of the first ones. It was formed in 1966, so there's very little development on the St. Croix. It's all part of the national park system, so we're really blessed to have such great fisheries, just so close to a big metro area. And then there's a ton of other stuff that we fish. I did try to add up the miles that we can guide on, that we have guided on in the 20 years, and I think it's like 600 to 700 miles of river that we can guide on. So I don't think there's any place in the country that has that much quality smallmouth fishing as Minnesota does. I mean, Wisconsin's a close second. A lot of my friends will poo-poo that because I'm, good friends with my boys in Wisconsin, but I think Minnesota's got them by a few miles. So
yeah, Wisconsin, another great area for fisheries.
Yes, it is.
It's
I'm
pretty
from
incredible.
Wisconsin, so I can say that and not be too bad, I guess.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
And you guys are you're Western style floating these rivers, right? And fishing them out of boats.
Yep,
Drift
we
boats?
fish them out of drift boats, and just like you would for trout or any other thing out west. When we first started 20 years ago, we got a lot of weird looks from people when we were at the gas station. What kind of boat is that? I've never seen anything like that. So now you see more and more. Just like everything else, good things are hard to keep under your hat. So there's more competition out there, more boats, and a lot more weekend warriors. But it's all good. The more people that appreciate their resource, the better off it is probably. So. We do the same thing as you would fishing for trout out in, let's say, in the Missouri or, the Bighorn or whatever. Take your pick, I guess. But it's a very, very similar style. Like I always say, the only thing, if we had mountains, it would be just as busy as Montana. Probably it's just a different fish, but we don't have the mountains, so which sometimes I think that's a good thing. But yeah.
When you mentioned earlier, you really think that section of the Mississippi is one of the best smallmouth fisheries. In your opinion, what makes it different and kind of makes it stand out in that perspective?
Well, for one thing, we've got a big chunk of that section is catch and release or slot limit, and that's been in there for a long time. There was a guy that started the Smallmouth Alliance up here called Tim Hosley. He's passed away here a year or so ago, and he got those regulations into our section from basically St. Cloud, Minnesota, all the way down to the Twin Cities.
Okay.
So it's everything from 12 to 20 has to go back. You can keep one over 20, and you can keep, I think, 3 under 12 or 4. I don't even know because we don't keep anything. But
Right.
It's really helped the fishery. It's a quality. The habitat is probably second to none. It's just rocks and rock bars and slow. I mean, it's got everything. And that goes for the whole Mississippi all the way up to almost the headwaters. I mean, it's all pretty solid smallmouth victory. It's a pretty clean and pristine waterway, despite what most people think of it. I've had clients over the years that have come up and fished our section that have lived in the Twin Cities their whole life, and they get up. Now they're only 30 minutes from where they live, and they go, "I can't believe this is the Mississippi," because it does take a big turn down in the Twin Cities. It looks a lot different than it does up here.
Yeah.
You don't have to. You don't have to go very far north to get into some really quality. And like I said, actually downtown Minneapolis, it's pretty decent fishery. But the genetics are there too. We just grow big fish. There's a lot of bait and a lot of food for them to eat. A lot of cover. There's good recruitment for spawning. So it really has everything that a quality fishery needs to flourish and survive.
Yeah. And you mentioned the change in the water as you get closer to the city. Is it the substrate that changes, that discolors it, or something that?
Well, there's just right north of St. Paul, right in between the Twin Cities, there's a dam called the Ford Dam, and right below that, the Minnesota River dumps in. Minnesota's a big agricultural river. It goes through a lot of the ag land in the western Minnesota, and it picks up a lot of just farm runoff and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right after that is where I say the river changes. It just turns into the Mississippi that most people are familiar with. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of what I say. But there's only one canyon section of the whole Mississippi, and that's right through downtown Minneapolis. So it's very, very good. There's you just can't get into there anymore because the locks have been shut down for
Right.
I don't know how long, but it's been 4 or 5 years probably at least.
Okay. And then you mentioned bait too, or food
Yeah.
sources. What are the typical kind of food sources available? Is it crawfish to all kinds of entomology, or walk through that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, most of it, if you've studied smallmouth at all, you know that most of their diet's crayfish. I mean, there's probably 80% of their diet. There's a ton of, further north you get into more like middle stuff. There's still plenty of crayfish, but there's a lot of red-tailed chubs. They love to eat those, and so do walleyes. But there's a ton of those in the northern part of the river. But there's just a ton of food. But mostly it's crayfish, and then minnows. And I throw minnows a lot. I cast the minnow patterns quite a bit. That's probably a big chunk of my fishing. I don't throw crayfish much, just because I think any respectable smallmouth needs to be caught either on top water or by a very subsurfaced fly. It's more my personal way I like to fish, and my clients like to fish that way. If I'm dredging crayfish, I'm bored off my mind, and I might as well go nymphing trout for that. But
Right.
so that's kind of our philosophy. If they don't want to eat it, then we'll find one that will. So some days if we have to dredge, we're having a rough day, and usually that doesn't happen too often.
Doesn't happen.
Yeah.
When you say topwater, why don't you talk about some of the fly patterns and techniques that you guys are using? I'd love to hear about that, because aggressive species, topwater eats are super fun with them. Yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, I mean that's all fly anglers. That's why we fly fish, is to see a fish eat the bug, and I guess that's kind of why I throw minnow patterns a lot too, is because I can see the fish eat the minnow. But yeah, we'd throw everything from poppers to divers to you name it, pretty much anything on top. But I mean, a basic popper is all you really need, and and then we're starting to throw a lot of my friends in Green Bay throw that wiggly. It's kind of just a big Chernobyl with a bunch of rubber legs on it, and any kind of foamy pattern. Later in the summer, when they kind of I went like popper shy a little bit. They've seen a bunch of poppers, and they're kind of like, I don't know about that. So we'll dead drift wigglies, or even poppers. You just dead drift them, and they seem to work better than popping them sometimes. But and that's just because of pressure. I think a lot more people are fishing for them. Before, we would never have to. We'd pop it once and they would eat it, But now it's a little more of a finesse game. It's getting into that. Really kind of trying to outthink them or keep them guessing, I guess. So, but the farther north you get, the less the pressure, and it gets a little bit more. I wouldn't say easier, but they will eat a popper. But I love a diver too. I think that's probably one of my favorite flies to fish is a diver. I just like the way it acts. I like the way it fishes, and it's just fun to fish. So if I had to pick one, I'd probably throw a diver of some kind, or just any kind of popper. It really doesn't matter. I love rubber legs. I think it needs rubber legs, because if a fish comes up and looks at your popper, if you just let it sit, when you pop it once and they come up on it and just ice it, those rubber legs just start dancing, and they get pretty freaked out, and they'll usually eat it. But sometimes when you pop it again, it's like, nope, and they'll go away. So once you have a fish underneath there, let it ride, and if you can, the current's going to let you do it. So, yep.
Let's talk about the popper and diver retrieve techniques and whatnot, because a lot of people, on the show, they're trout anglers. They haven't really experienced a lot of that type of fishing activity. So I'd love to hear, your technique, break it down, from the cast to the retrieve.
Okay, it's pretty simple. I mean, it's not really rock science. We kind of let the fish tell us how they want it, right? So I'm a big believer in pick it up, lay it down. No false cast. I mean, I get trout guys in the boat. That's all they want to do is false cast. And with the new rods and the new lines and the new everything, the technology is so good right now. So basically, you get to your distance, 40, 50 feet from the boat. If you can cast that, you just lay it out, pop it once, let it run a little bit, then maybe pop it again. 2 or 3 pops. If they don't eat it by then, they're not gonna probably, unless they're underneath. I've had fish come underneath it and just follow it and follow it and follow it and just keep it iced. Most of the time they're gonna eat it. Sometimes they don't. But that's pretty much how I do it. I just slow is probably better than fast. There's some guys that really like to burn them, pop, 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 and I just if they're super aggressive, then they're going to let you know that. They're usually going to eat it either when it lands or the first pop if they're aggressive. So if they don't eat it after 2 or 3, they're probably not going to. So pick it up and find one that will. So just pick the popper up, load it, and shoot it. No false cast. It's less can go wrong the more you keep it on the water. So and you're on the water more by doing that. So that's kind of how I do it. The divers is pretty much the same thing. A nice long dive, just a bloop, making a big water bubble, let it come up, let it ride a little bit. And then another bloop or 2, and then, but I like a long underneath the water, just let it get underneath there. And then come back up, nice bubble trail, and that seems to work the best for me. The diver I'll throw here in a month we open up for smallmouth season, and I'll throw that sometimes on a sink tip, and it'll dive once, and then it'll just stay underneath the water and try to fight to the top. But it's when the water's dark and cold, it moves a ton of water, and it darts and dives and does all kinds of weird stuff under the water with just a mini tip, like a 2 or 3 foot mini tip and a real short leader. And that's pretty effective when the water's dark and dirty because you're pushing a lot of water, making a big disturbance underneath. And the water's too cold, they're really not looking. Sometimes they are. They'll eat it up top, but most of the time it's a subsurface eat. So that's why I'll run a diver in the spring a lot.
Okay. In your popper, you're running a floating line. You like a weight forward or
like a bit, like a
line?
bass bug, or like I throw SA stuff. That's kind of where my go-to line is, and we either throw a Titan taper, which is a real heavy forward line, or their bass bug is excellent line. So that's basically a Titan taper long, and it throws a bug beautifully. They're just great lines. So that's I'll tell someone who's starting, buy an expensive line first, and then buy a rod, and then that'll fit that line, because fly line is way overlooked as far as a tool by flying goers. They all wanted the fancy new rods, but if you put a crappy line on a fancy rod, it's just an average rod. So when the Orvis came out with the H3, they sent me a finesse 8-weight, and it took me 3 lines to figure it out. But once I got it figured out, the thing is a cannon. So work with your lines. I'm fortunate where I can try a bunch of lines and not have to pay $100 every crack. But, talk to somebody that's doing it and knows what goes with what rod, and I think you'll be. And everyone casts different, so some guys don't like it the way that I like it, I guess. But we have a pretty good idea what's going on, and we're here to help whoever.
Yeah.
If you need a question asked, or we're more than happy to help people out. So. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the importance of having that weight forward and what it is actually kind of doing for you? When you're casting poppers.
Yeah, we're throwing big flies. I mean, I think a lot of guys come up from, especially Missouri, Colorado, the southern Midwest, I guess, or western states, where they're used to throwing little bitty minnow patterns or crayfish patterns or something like that. We get like 4 or 5. Our minnow patterns are 5 inches long, probably, very wind resistant, and so we freak a lot of people out with our smallmouth flies, how big they are. Poppers, sometimes we have to downsize and make them small during the middle of summer, but most of the time it's a pretty good popper, it's a pretty good diver, and it's a pretty good minnow. So you need the weight forward to turn that fly over. And if you fish the way that we all that I like to see people fish, where you just load that rod and shoot it, you need a big weight forward line to make that happen. So that's you just pick it up, load it, and go. And a weight forward line will certainly do that, especially on the quality rods that everyone's making right now. I mean, you look at some of the cheaper stuff that's out there was probably as good as our good stuff was 15 years ago, right? It's incredible the technology that's out there, and how can they make a rod any better? And then they just do, and it's insane how good they are right now. So.
Yeah. The rod has changed, but I agree with you too. You made that comment earlier about the line changes in scenarios. It's
everything.
So different from where it was.
Now, have they gone kind of overboard with redfish line, carp line, whatever line? I think they probably have, but we worked with Rio years ago with the smallmouth line that they had, and that was just basically a bonefish line with a little bit more in front. So I mean, they doctored up and but SA has really come a long way, and their lines are really, really incredible, I think. I mean, that's the one that I use, and I'm real happy with it. So, and their customer service is second to none. I mean, you're really, really good people.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, they have a great product. They do. They take really good care of you. I've had some great lines from them, and I think you mentioned it earlier too. People really choose their rod and want to be specific, and everybody casts a little different. And it's the same thing with lines, But they do make a difference. I always use the example of I remember going on a float trip with a friend, and we were indicator nymphing, and she's like, "What rod is this? What rod is this?" To the guide, and he's like, "Oh, it's just I can't remember. It was an inexpensive rod." She said, "So easy to cast." He said, "Oh no, that's the line."
Yeah.
And he had an indicator specific line, and it was like night and day in comparison to a standard line that you would use. Just that moved that heavy weighted system so much easier. So.
Yeah. I remember my first client, David Bergerson, still a good client of mine. In fact, we're fishing in Argentina next year. But he struggled all morning. It was my very first legit trip 20 years ago, and he struggled and struggled. David, just use my rod. Just use my rod. And he's like, "Well, no, this is fine." I go, "Dude, you're killing yourself. You're casting like." So he finally picked. He broke down after lunch. He picked it up and. He go, holy crap, this thing is unbelievable. I go, it's the line, you're not, he had just a basic heavy trout line on it. And
right.
I think at the time, Real Clouser was the hot line, when he first started. And he picked it up and he's like, yeah. And he went out and bought one that night. So, I mean, it makes that big of a difference.
It does, yeah.
Yeah,
night and day. All right, so that really covers the smallie side of things, but the muskie is a whole nother breed, species, attempt, etc. I mean, it's a different world, and I know we're going to talk about some of the mental sides of it, but the approach. Let's talk about how you're approaching the water, what you're looking for, how you're trying to put people on fish, etc. Go through that.
I only do it basically in the fall, so once my smallmouth season's over, then we flip it probably mid-September to muskies until we get ice, which is November, first or second week in November usually, depending on the fall, I guess. But that's when they're the most aggressive. That's when they're the biggest. That's when they're in the best shape of their year. A lot of guys will fish them right away, which they're just coming off a spawn. It's a great time to fish them because they're looking to eat right after the spawn. So, but they're pretty beat up and they're skinny, and and smallmouth fishing is so good that it's hard to do that. So, I've done some muskie fishing in the summer. Guys have requested it, and I've done it, but it usually turns into a smallmouth trip. I mean, So now if we do one in the summer, which I might do one or two a year, maybe, and I'll say we're not taking any smallmouth stuff. It's muskies, and that's all we're doing, because the guy will be fishing for 4 hours and not see a fish, and like, can we just catch something? And it's like, well, you wanted to do this. It wasn't my call, but so that's kind of why I do it in the fall, and it's still musky fishing. You can go 3 days and not see one, or you can be like the kids that came in from Long Island this last fall and caught 3 in one day, and 2 of them were within 15 minutes of each other. So it was a really pretty crummy musky season for the most part, except for like I had a 5-day window with those guys, and it was pretty magical. But and that basically sums up musky fishing. It can be either just a total grind, BS, just bad, or if you do make it happen, it's probably one of the best days of fishing you've ever had. So
Yeah.
It's a high risk, high reward type thing. And you've got to be willing to do it. I've probably talked more people out of it than I've talked into it, especially clients. I don't think you'd like it. You're just grinding all day. I mean, it's just for maybe a follow or 2, or maybe a hook and set, and then that's where it really gets crappy. Is most anglers are just, let's face it, they're trout dudes, and they want to lift the rod, and they're going to blow that hook set. They can go 3 days, have one shot, and then they just
Gone.
It's just gone. And as a guide, you just sit there and and I've done it. I mean, I've done it 100 times, but some of the best musky guides and anglers I know of, we've all done it. We've all crapped the bed, right? So it's a grind, and it's hard, and it's a lot of work, but it's when it happens, it's pretty damn cool.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like it's like catching your first tarpon or something like that. They don't jump or anything, but to see them eat it, and that big of a fish, and that river is it's amazing. I took a client out, years ago, probably 10 now, 15 maybe, I don't know. Who's a really good saltwater angler, and he's been on a number of my saltwater trips and stuff like that. And I go, of all the guys to get it done, this guy can get it done, right? So we're coming down the river, and I go throw up on that seam, and he does, and this 50-inch muskie just comes out and just smokes his fly. And he just sits there frozen, and I'm screaming, set, and he's just sitting there looking, going, holy bleep, and he's like, I can't believe it. And I'm like, set. And, so he misses the fish, and, I'm like, Roy, what in the hell happened there? You're like one of the best, And he goes, I just can't believe there was a fish that big in this river, and I just sat there, and then like every 20 minutes I could just hear him mumbling behind me. He was in the back seat, and he goes, I can't believe that fish was that big, and I can't believe it, and I'm like, finally I said, what do you think, I was lying to you? And he goes, well, kind of, I didn't think you're just, you're a guide.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, I always tell everyone, you're going to miss your first fish, just get over it, because it's like your first tarpon. You'll never bow to your first tarpon. I don't care what you hook that tarpon and it comes up out of the water. You're just like going, holy bleep, and it's just, bink, it's gone, but you really don't care at that time. But muskie's a little different. Now, if those kids didn't miss their first fish, but it's so hard, because you're grinding all day, and then to finally get to eat, you're just like, oh my God, it's never when you expect it. And,
Right.
They just have a mind of their own. They know an angler better than we know anglers, I guess, and know how to mess with you. So they're like
and it's different than tarpon too, because tarpon you're sight fishing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for the
you know
most
it's
part.
there. Where these guys they're ambush predators.
No,
They're
you don't know.
sitting by logs, seams,
big time.
and you put that cast in there on that heavy rod, heavy fly, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this dragon
Just
comes
comes
out
up.
and just smokes you.
Smokes it. Yeah, exactly.
But then at the same time, you've got that duck bill that you like have to rail to get that hook set.
Yeah.
And if you don't, like, your chances of getting that fish in they're
gone.
dwindling really quick.
Really quickly, yeah. If you don't, like the worst eat can be the fish coming right at you. I mean, like I tell clients, if you see one eat it and it comes at you, just drop the rod and light a cigarette, count to 3, and then set the hook. So let them turn. No one's that good. I don't care. If you are, it's time to quit. But when they're cut, you'll never get a hook in them, because the momentum's they're coming at you. You can't strip that fast, and to get a really hard hook set into them, it's damn near impossible. But so if you can wait, if you're that good to let them turn and then pop them, you'll get them every time pretty much. But being able to do that,
Right.
saying and doing are two different things, right?
You're a 1%er for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's so hard. It's like I say, they're like permit. They're that moody, but you can't see them, so it makes it even that much more difficult. These permit will tell you, screw you in person, where a muskie's not, or they follow it in and they do their follow, and that's and then they'll just kind of sulk off and go, I don't think so today. Especially the bigger fish, they've been around the block for a long time, so.
Yeah, the permit is the one that always gets me is when they just they rush in on it and stall. And you're like, oh my God.
I don't think so.
Did you see that? Did you see that? And they'll move really far too. I remember being in Mexico and casting the one, and I mean, it was so windy I could barely get a cast 4 feet off the boat, and I flopped this thing out there and the lines all over the place, and he was like, hey, I'm just going to take a chance. And this thing must have moved 15 feet to the fly, and I couldn't believe it. And it was like in an instant, and then just stopped, and I was like, nah, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Moved on.
Yeah.
Whereas the muskie, my experience has been, though either smoke it or it's the follow, the slow. Like you can see them, you're like, oh my gosh. You get it to the boat, you start doing your figure eights. You're like, come on. I remember fishing crankbaits years ago on the reservoir up here for tiger muskie.
Yeah.
And I had one follow. He disappeared. I did my figure eights, and then I pulled my rod up, and I was on a crankbait rod, and it came straight up looking at it, and I pulled it out too fast, and I went, oh man, I just went click and dropped it, and that thing complete 180 and smoked it right on the side of the boat. And I was like, gosh, I can't believe I just got you. That was awesome to see.
It's cool. I mean, I had a client, he got lazy at the end of the day, so he wasn't aiding, or at least, I tell everyone, you're not going to figure eight every cast. I know you're not that good. I don't do it, but at least bring it to the boat and turn it, give me a J, give me something, just make it different, right? Well, he went to pick up his cast, and, of course, you're picking up a cast, so now you're accelerating the fly, and it's coming up towards the surface. So basically, that's your figure eight, because you're doing two different things at once. And this fish literally, as the fly left the water, came up out of the water and ate it in the midair, and he just smoked. It was like a 46-inch fish, I think. It was a big fish. And if he wanted to cook that fish, and he's a big guy, he's probably 6'3", he would have flipped right out of the boat, because he screamed like a little girl. It was cute. But this fish just smoked his fly. He landed it
in the air.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was probably one of the best eats that I've had. But it was, and he screwed it up. And I'm like, he screwed it up. So. But we got the fish, so better lucky than good, I guess. So
yeah, exactly. I'll take your luck over good.
Yeah.
So tell me about the rod setups that you're using. Are you guys using cable, or are you using mono, etc. on your lines?
Yeah, I mean, the leader setup's pretty simple. So I usually use like a 50-pound floral to 40-pound wire, do a double uni on that or whatever, and then maybe 18 inches, 20 inches of wire to a snap. I use snaps. I use the I can't think of them, of course, because I'm trying to think of them. Anyway, the snaps with the ring in them, they're
okay. I can't remember what they're called.
Yeah, I'm trying to total blank. I can, I've got a billion of them, but anyway. And then I do a simple 3-turn cinch to that, and then cinch it down, and they hold pretty well. And safety snap, that's it. Yeah. SA sells them. I know that. So That's pretty much my leader setup. So your leader's maybe 3 feet long, maybe four if you're, and the only reason you do that is because you need to turn that fly at the end of the cast. So if I have a really small or long leader, that fly will stall out on an 8. So you want that leader's pretty much as short as possible, so you can turn it and keep it moving and change directions and depths and all that good stuff when you're trying to figure eight the muskie at the boat. And it's just easier to cast. You're throwing, half a chicken basically, and so you need a nice short leader. You need a heavy sink tip line. It's ugly fishing. I mean, there's no getting around it. You're chucking big flies with big rods and heavy sink tips, and it's a lot of work. And, so when someone comes up, I don't teach them to aerialize a fly. We're doing the water load it and boom it and chuck it until you can kind of figure it out, and then you can. Then it's probably easier to backcast a damn musky fly than it is to overhand it or traditional fly cast it. So
just because of that water load, is that why?
Well, even if you're not, you can just kind of come in sideways and just kind of and then chuck it. It seems to work a little bit better. My kid's really good at it. In fact, we were out trout fishing this weekend, and he was like backhanding trout fly. I'm like, you just can't get the musky fisherman out of here. It was pretty hilarious, but yeah, I mean, it's I can't teach you how to do it until you got the rig in your hand and you're like, it's pretty daunting, and it's pretty. And some of the flies are just, I love big flies. I just think they move a lot of water. They draw a lot of attention. They're just, I like big heads just pushing a lot of water. So kind of going back to our original discussion about gear versus fly, fly guys will never be able to imitate what gear guys can do with double blades and big bulldogs that push a ton of water and really affect their lateral lines. So that's why I like big, bulky, round, the head brown. So when I'm stripping it, it's booming and it's causing disturbance underneath the water. That's kind of
right.
I learned that from double cowgirls throwing those in conventional gear, how much they thump and vibrate. I mean, those things shake your whole rod, and you can only imagine the vibration that's going through the water when you're reeling those things in. So you're trying to imitate kind of as much as you can that kind of pulsating and booming effect that pushing that much water has on the fish in the lateral line, and get it to hopefully trigger up and eat the fly.
And your rod setup, I mean, musky rods are different.
They're way different.
So talk about that, like the importance of that, because that whole figure eight scenario. There's a reason to have a type of rod for that. There's a reason for the bigger flies, the wire, the line, etc. So I'd like to hear that.
They're just basically broomsticks with eyes on them and a nice back handle so you can figure eight. So I fished with Sean Combs a couple of years down in Asheville, and he wanted to know about musky stuff. So I brought him one of our old beater, great musky rods, but it's a broomstick. And he goes, this is a fly rod. And I go, no, it's not. It's a tool, that you can throw a fly with. It's not. You have to get out of that headspace of, this beautiful fly rod doing, because it's,
there's no finesse in musky fishing.
I mean, if you're really good. Now, Pete Kutzer from Orvis has fished with me a number of times musky fishing, and he can still, he's one of the best casters out there. Right. But I mean, that guy can throw, a musky fly 80 feet and not even break a sweat. And that's when I yell at him. I like, look at dude, even if we all know you can cast, but if you throw it over 50 feet, chances of putting a hook on that fish are slim to none, right? So let's keep it buttoned in, and you're pretty, but let's fish, right? So, and then he picked up, this was when they still had the H2s, and I had a one-piece 12 weight, and we rigged that up, and now this is a fly rod. I go, yeah, it's a fly rod, but it's not a musky rod, So, now they have the Clearwater, the cheaper one. That's a pretty decent stick. It's like 11 weight, 450 grain probably you put on that. But it's got the long, spay handle kind of on it, so you can sit and manipulate the rod while you're doing the figure eight, and you can also put that on your forearm, the butt here. So when
Yep.
you're casting, you're using that for extra leverage, and your fatigue mat, is not what it is with the standard fly rods. So, I mean, they've come a long way. All of them, a lot of the companies have, and there's a lot of boutique guys out there that are making beautiful fly rods. That they're not beautiful, but they're musky rods. They're not.
Yeah, they're designed for
They're designed to get the job done. So, the technology is probably not what it needs to be because it's muskies. I mean, there's just really, really no finesse whatsoever in it. So, and it's ugly fishing, and people are gravitated towards that kind of rod, and rightfully so. So, plus it's a big fish. If you do get a big one, you need to have some beef to turn it and do all that good stuff. But they're not really huge fighters or anything. I mean, a big fish will run, quite a bit, but not.
It's one run, maybe two.
Yeah, one or
and
two.
You're kind of like,
yeah, and you just kind of, you look at the fish and kind of figure if they're done or not. And when they come up top and they're kind of floating, and you can kind of get them in. Now I lost a 53-incher because I thought she was done, but she wasn't. She jumped one more time, and boom, and I still had nightmares about that fish because I chased that fish for like 8 years, and we finally hooked it, and I haven't seen her since. So anyway, but yeah, I mean it's fishing. Crap's gonna happen, right? So
yeah.
But that's kind of set up wire. Always use wire. Floral was a big thing. People were using 100-pound floral. And, well, they don't see it as good and blah, blah, blah. And I go, you're going to lose a fish sooner or later. And sure enough, you'll lose a fish sooner or later. They'll go through that floral. I don't care how thick it is. And
Are their teeth serrated, or are they a pointed tooth?
they're pointed. They're just like, they're pretty pointed. But then they have rakers up on the top.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, pike are worse than muskies, really. I mean, because, muskies are bigger, so there's not as many teeth. Or a small pike, I mean, they'll just rip crap up. I mean, I've used the same fly for probably 15 fish. Now, I've rehabbed it a few times, and I hate to cut it apart and retie it because then it's going to lose its mojo, right? So,
Right.
So I mean, they're not really rough on flies. Where a pike would just shred especially a small one. They have so many rakers in them that they'll just rip a fly apart in a heartbeat. But they're just big. I mean, they're just big teeth, and so there's less of them. So they're not as rough on your equipment. But it only takes one to bite through a piece of floral.
Yeah.
So, I even if we get a big fish, I retie my wire. Even I mean, it's just not. It's not worth a fish of a lifetime to prove a point. If a muskie wants to eat your fly, there ain't nothing you can do about it. They're going to eat it. They don't care if it's wire or if it's floral or if it's, like I always said, you could put a dirty sock with some hooks in it, and if the fish wants to eat it, he's going to eat it. He doesn't care. You just need to find that one fish that wants to eat. They're going to eat.
All right.
So.
When you're tying up your leaders, how are you making the transition from your wire to your mono?
I do a double uni, so it's kind of a different knot. I've used that a lot in my smallmouth stuff. Funny you should say, because I was watching. I don't know. They used to have a fishing show on ESPN or something. I don't know what it was on, and they had that knot wars thing. And I saw the knot. I saw the knot in that. It's like this is the strongest knot, So I started. It's super easy to tie too.
Yeah.
And so I just started using that, and how I even use a trout. It's a little bulkier but I even tie it for my trout tippet now because I can't stand double surges. And I don't know if I'm tying them wrong or what, but I can never get them to work right, and blood knot's a pain. So I just throw a double uni in it and call it good.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And the double uni is nice too because you can transition from a heavier line to a thinner line a lot easier than a lot of those other knots and whatnot too. So.
Right. I'll even use it like if I have a spin guy and we're putting a clear, he's running braid with the clear lead, I'll use a double uni on that too. So it's just a good all around knot. I mean,
and it's tied well when you see it. I mean, it's really straightforward.
Yeah, it's just two knots butting against each other, so there's no pinch point in it or anything, it's really
keeps your leader straight and everything.
Yeah, it's just a good all around knot. I mean, people get all whipped up on knots. I mean, you need to know about 4 of them really in the grand scheme of things. A clinch, a knot slip mono, and a uni, and that's probably the only knots I tie most of the summer. Maybe an Albright every once in a while, but that's about it.
It's yeah.
Yeah.
You get a couple of those in your repertoire and your set, and
Yeah. Don't overthink it. There's always a better knot out there, but I don't know if they work for you. Just run with them.
Yep. Let's do this. We're gonna wrap up the show here with the the musky rod we kind of talked about, but talking about some of the mental aspect of it as well. But before we do that, how do people get a hold of you if they want to book a trip or find out more about your outfit?
The best way probably is to go on the website. I have a phone. My phone number's there. Email address is there. It's Kip at wildwoodfloattrips.com. If you want to message me on either Facebook or Instagram, it's Wildwood Float Trips, both of them. Pretty easy to find. You can go through the Orvis website. I'm Orvis endorsed, so you can go to there and click, go to the Orvis website, put in Kip Vieth, and it'll pop up, and phone numbers there, all that good stuff. You can put an inquiry through them, and they can send it to me. So there's a billion different ways you can do it, but it's simple. It's easy to do, and we try to get back to everybody right away. So
yeah. And you have lodging available as well?
No, we did. We don't anymore. We're just kind of getting out of that business. But we have several motels that we work with. In fact, I just met with one last week. We, just to reaffirm everything. So we put together some pretty nice packages. If you want to fly in, you can fly in the morning, and we can be on the water mid-morning and fish till dark, and then put you up in a hotel or wherever we're at, and it works out pretty well. So it's just a little easier to do it that way from a logistics standpoint, because so where are we fishing? They'll ask me in April. I'm like, I have no idea. I'll know a couple days before we go, probably. So whatever's fishing or where the water is on the spring. I mean, we've got record flooding right now. Basically, the summer I fished about 4,000 feet. We're at 36,000, maybe 40,000 right now with all the snow we've had. So, but it's going fast, so it should come back down by opener, I would think, unless we get a bunch of rain. But I just never know, So that's it. I'm pretty open that way with lodging and stuff like that.
Yeah, getting people set up in the right scenario for the right time.
Yep, it's easy, really easy to do.
And then I just want to touch base because I know you do some other trips, international trips.
Yep.
I think like Argentina and saltwater trips and things like that as well.
Yep, we do. I'll just kind of run through the thing. So we start our off season in November. We go down to New Orleans for 4 days of red fishing. Usually take December off, and then January we'll be in Argentina for 2 weeks, 2 different lodges. And then in March we go to Belize, and then May we do tarpon down in Florida. So those are kind of how it is right now. We're probably going to add to that in the next couple of years and grow that end of the business, just because it's a lot of fun, and it's just really cool to see other places and do other things.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Great way to take up the off season and make the best of it for sure.
Yeah.
So let's wrap it up. Let's talk about this. We talked about the rod breakdown and the musky scenario, but there is a huge mental side of it. And what are some of the things that we could maybe help our listeners with on getting prepared for the day and working through the day when it gets tough or weak?
Yeah, people ask, how long should I book? I go, it could happen in the first hour, or it could happen, the last hour of the third day, but usually 3 days on the water, and you're going to have probably a pretty good opportunity to boat a muskie. We fish at a little different water than the guys to my east. We're more of a trophy fishery, so the fish there's plenty of fish, but they're bigger. We have our genetics are stronger than anywhere in the United States. I mean, Wisconsin is now planting Minnesota fish because they grow bigger and they grow faster. So the Leech Lake strain of muskies is by far the best genetic strain. So, but you're also going to catch the bigger fish on our bigger waters, but you might not see as many. So with that being said, it can be a grind, and you've got to stay focused. And I tell you what, it's probably the hardest thing in fly fishing is to stay focused on musky fishing, because it's very, very fatiguing. You're throwing a big fly. You've got to finish every cast. You have to do all the little things. It's just like a football guy. It's not the big things that make you a champion. It's the little things. So, turning that fly after every cast, making it, hitting the spots, just staying focused, not looking up at the birds or or just kind of, the minute you look up or take it away from the attention that you have is when that damn fish is going to eat. I mean, I've seen it happen so many times, it's insane. I mean, the minute you unfocus, and those fish seem to know that, and they will eat it. So, stay focused, and if ADHD is not a good thing to be a musky fisherman, because I have a little bit. I even towards the end of the day, I'm like, come on, we need something here, and it's very frustrating. So you have to have that mental note that, hey, I can go 3 days and not see a fish, or I can go 3 days and see 10 of them and have 8 opportunities where they eat to land it. So it's either feast or famine. It seems like, especially last year, we'd go 3-4 days without seeing a fish, and then boom, 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 boom. Real streaky. Play your weather. You can't do much about the weather, but play your moon phases. If you're booking a trip, if you're coming up, I'll tell you right now, peak moon phases fill first. Guys have come to realize that that's an important part of the game. It adds 10% to your success probably if you play the moon game. If you get good weather with the moon, you've just upped your percentage probably 30 to 40%. So I mean, it's
what's good weather for muskie? What do you consider good weather?
Crappy weather.
Crappy weather.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
drizzly.
So if it's sunny and 60, and we had a lot of that last fall. We had a beautiful fall for weather-wise for muskies.
Yeah.
It stunk. The water didn't chill, and I had my big group up here one weekend. I had 8 guys up fishing. I think we caught 3 fish, 4 boats going. It was not good. None of them were big. Next guys came in, weather changed, got cold, and that's when the boys from Long Island and Oregon caught, 5 fish in 3 days. It was just cold, weather switched, moon was right, and we just, it was insane. So, and we caught, all the fish were 40 plus. So it was with 48 and a half or something like that. So I mean, it was, and then the last 2 days they were here 5. Last 2 days we didn't see a fish. Got sunny and nice. So you need that change. You need the moon to be acting up. You need the weather to be changing. You need the cold to kind of shock them into like, oh crap, here comes winter. I need to get my eggs growing or keep them growing, so I have to eat. So it's all about making more muskies. So the big females, they got to eat to keep those eggs growing all winter long. So they're stocking up for the winter ride. So they'll eat a little bit more than they normally do, just to build up their reserves. So that's why I love the fall. I mean, it's just, they're a little less spooky. They're always spooky and weird, but they're a little less so, and they're more apt to eat more often. So that's why we do the fall thing. But, new moon, I like new moon best, usually 3 or 4 days before the new moon, during the new moon, or a couple days after. Full moon's kind of the same thing, but that bright, if it's not cloudy, and it's bright at night, they will eat at night. So that's why I kind of like the new moon best. But I'll take both. I mean, they're both very, very good. And the salooner tables, everyone kind of poo-poos them, and I did when I first started. But, you do it for this long, and you realize that there's definitely something to a moon phase. And, and then you moonrise, moon set, overfoot or underfoot, overhead, all those things are. You need to be in a spot where there's a fish when those peak times are happening. So
yeah. Well, Kip, it's been a pleasure. It's obvious you have 20 plus years experience at chasing both of these style fish and many more. Wealth of knowledge, and appreciate you being on the show. If you guys are interested in checking out the outfit here, give Keith a ring. Wildwood Float Trips. I'm personally excited to come up and see you and maybe do something up there. So I'll be talking to you about that. But
awesome.
Yeah, great having you on the show, man. Really appreciate
thank
it.
you, Christian. Appreciate it. Thanks for the invitation. It was a lot of fun.
You got it.
Yep.
You got it, man. All right, guys, that's it for this week. Again, Wildwood Float Trips. Kip Vieth on the line here. If you want to get a hold of them, go for it. We'll see you next week.